Hi, welcome back. And now we will begin reading some more. If you're new to my channel, I like to read children's stories, and I'll probably read eventually like adult stories or young adults. Basically, I'm reading whatever interests me, and I hope you'll come along and hear the story with me. Right now, I just started reading a book from my childhood called King of the Dollhouse. It's by Patricia Clapp. You can see it's beat up and well used and well loved because it's been around, I think it was published in 1974, so that shows you how old I am. But right now we're getting ready to start chapter 2. The next morning, Ellie woke up early and lay with her head closed, trying to remember what wonderful, unbelievable thing had happened. Something to do with the dollhouse, but what was it? A dream? Suddenly she heard tiny, tiny sounds, giggles, little voices, almost too faint to be heard at all, and her eyes snapped open and she rolled very quickly to the bed. There they still were! In the little bedroom where King Bora Bora had gone to sleep so quickly the night before, the tiniest, smallest creatures imaginable were jumping all around his bed. They were chubby with bright little eyes, and they wore identical little cover-up suits in different colors, and they wriggled around like young puppies, falling off the king's bed, scrambling happily on again. King Bora Bora had pulled up the blanket way up over his head so only the top of his crown shone. There's a little picture of the little babies, the peanut butter babies. With a chortle, one of the babies pulled with both tiny hands until he had the crown and put it on his own head. It was so large that only as big around as a nickel that it came down to his shoulders. Ellie laughed softly. "Good morning," she said. All the babies turned around to her at once, their eyes wide with surprise. Slowly, King Bora Bora pulled his head from beneath the covers and sat up in bed. "Where's my crown?" he asked. "Which one of you took my crown this time?" "It's you, is it? Have you no respect for your father? Here, give it back to me." Reaching down to where the baby sat on the floor with the crown resting on his little shoulders, King Bora Bora lifted it off and placed it on his own head. Then he turned to Ellie. "Good morning," he said graciously. "Did you sleep well?" Ellie inquired. The king flipped back the blanket, sending several of the babies sliding off the bed, and then stood up, adjusting his velvet red robe. "Well, quite well, until the children awoke. I thought I had made it clear that we all liked peanut butter delivered early." "Oh, sorry," said Ellie. "I just woke up." She hopped out of bed herself, dropped to her knees on the fuzzy rug, doing it carefully so as not to frighten the royal children, who still sat looking at her. "I'll get the peanut butter right away. Just wait here. I'll bring it from the kitchen." "I assume you have an explanation for your parents?" the king remarked. "Oh," said Ellie, "I hadn't thought of that." "Well, couldn't I just bring them up here and show them to you?" "You make us sound like something in a museum," the king said fretfully. "You are rather," said Ellie. "A very interesting museum," she added in haste. "Not the kind with bones and things." Said the king. "So I'll bring Mommy and Daddy up here to see you." Said the king again. "We regret having to exercise our royal authority," he went on, "but we must insist that our presence not be known to your parents." "We?" said Ellie repeated. "You mean the babies and you?" The king drew himself up to his full 6 inches. "We are not speaking of royal children," he said distinctly. "We are speaking of royal self. If you had any knowledge of royalty at all, you would know that this is the way we speak." Ellie laughed. "You're so small, it sounds funny to be we. There's hardly enough to be an I or a me." "A very one-sided point of view. If everything and everyone were exactly the same size, this would be a very odd world indeed. Now, are we, or are we not, to be properly fed here? If not, I must gather the children together and search for another lodgings." And there she sits talking to King Bora Bora. There he is, tiny little man. And she's talking to him about the peanut butter. Yeah, Ellie rose quickly to her feet. "I'll get you the peanut butter right away, and I won't say anything to my parents, at least not yet. I'll be right back." Ellie heard her mother and father talking in their rooms as she ran past, so she knew the kitchen would be empty. She fetched the jar of peanut butter from the cupboard shelf, added a slice of bread and a knife just in case somebody wanted a sandwich, and a paper napkin to be tidy. Then she hurried upstairs back to her room, closing the door quietly behind her. I got the peanut butter," she said. King Bora Bora looked at her out of the little bedroom window. "Excellent," he said. "The babies have become quite hungry." Some of them were lying on the dollhouse floor, holding their little stomachs and crying in their tiny voices. Ellie unscrewed the top of peanut butter jar and set it on the dining room floor just because it was the easiest place. Then she reached carefully into the little kitchen for tiny plates and spoons. But before she could get them, the royal babies were climbing happily into the open jar, mashing peanut butter into their mouths with their little hands, and Ellie looked at them disapprovingly. "Your children have dreadful manners," she said to King Bora Bora. "Look at them. Why, they can't even use spoons and plates like other people." "Because they're not like other people," said the king. "Besides, I have quite enough to worry about them getting into their peanut butter without worrying about how they will eat it. Well, they should worry about how to eat it, she scolded. Come down from there. See for yourself. With a sigh, King Bor came down the stairs of the dollhouse, moving in a stately fashion, and went into the dining room where he stood gazing at his children. They are rather piggy, he admitted finally. I should say they are. Help me scoop them out of the jar and we'll teach them to eat properly. Just at that moment, a few of the babies, covered with peanut butter, toppled out over the side of the jar onto the floor, where they promptly rolled up into their happy little heaps and fell asleep. Their stomachs were as round as marbles. Within an instant, the rest of them followed suit. Fear it's too late to teach them anything now, said the king. I expect you're right, Ellie agreed. They really are peanut butter babies, aren't they? Well, at lunch, things were certainly going to be different. And she put the top back on the peanut butter jar, screwing it down firmly, and placed it on her dresser. Goodness, look at all those babies in the peanut butter jar. They are having a fun time and love their peanut butter. Now I must get dressed, she said. It's time for my breakfast. King Bor cleared his throat. I believe you've overlooked something. A little matter of my breakfast. Oh, I thought you would eat peanut butter too. At my age? The king snorted, a very little snort. No, healthful as it may be, I have outgrown peanut butter. I could do with a raisin or two. However, perhaps a bit of a cookie. What about some breadcrumbs? Ellie asked. There's a slice right here. King looked depressed. Just plain breadcrumbs? Well, if I must, I must. Would a drop of water be too much to ask? Of course not. I'll get you some. Ellie went to the bathroom and started to fill the glass with water when she soon realized the king would never be able to drink from something so huge. With a sudden inspiration, she took the cap off her toothpaste tube, scrubbed it carefully, and put a drop of water in it. Then, taking it back to the dollhouse, she set it in front of the room, adding several soft crumbs from the slice of bread. King Bor watched her. What's that great thing? He said, pointing to the toothpaste cap. It's the smallest thing I could find. If you use both hands, you'll be able to lift it, I think. Taking the blunt-nosed scissors from her desk, she cut a little square from the paper napkin, folded it neatly, and laid it on the table. King Bor sat down in one of the chairs, spread the tiny napkin across his lap, and surveyed the meal. Bread and water, he said mournfully. One would think I'm a prisoner. He picked up one of the crumbs and broke it neatly and took a bite. Just hand me the newspaper, will you? I may as well read it again while I eat. As Ellie laid the little newspaper beside his place at the table and said, Doesn't royalty ever say please? The king gazed at her for a second and then inclined his head with dignity. You are quite right, she said. Noblesse oblige. Thank you, my dear. Ellie dressed and went down to breakfast. So that is the end of chapter 2. Tomorrow we will continue with chapter 3 to find out more about King Bor and those little peanut butter babies. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you keep coming back and hearing more stories as we move from books to books, because I have a lot. So I'm happy to share them with you. Thank you for listening to me today.